episode of All Things 3D. It's this week in 3D Roundup. We're going to talk about some news items that happened this week of 7/11 2014. And I'm your co-host, Chris Kopak.
And I'm Mike Balzer, and look at Chris's hair.
I went Space Monkey. So I guess I could kick it off. I just went through and found a couple things that I thought were pretty that obviously 3ders.org consistently coming through with some 3D news for us. So those that aren't that don't get a chance to listen to the podcast can find a lot of news items over at 3ders.org. But this was a pretty cool one, kind of along the lines of the medicine, 3D in medicine. This was an inoperable tumor that was removed from a 5-year-old thanks to 3D printing, is what the headline says. And this was in Barcelona, Spain, and they visualized an operation using 3D printing and 3D scanning, and were able to remove a tumor that they otherwise would not have been able to using the visual aids of 3D printing. So the doctor says that he couldn't have done it without the aid of 3D printing. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's really important. As we're aware of by now, I've had to do something similar, and I do agree that it does give the surgeons now the ability to either practice or plan their procedures by visually, and not only visually, but having tactile response so that they can navigate and go through the procedure even before entering. But a caveat behind this is that it all depends on the MRI or CT scanner that's used in order to create this replica. If it is one of the lower resolution, there are going to be things that are lost in the translation. So it's still not quite there yet, but it's getting there, and obviously the 3D print functionality is also improving immensely. So, yay, Chris!
Yeah.
So, well, since you're on the medical end, I'll just skip to my next one, and we'll leave the printer to after this. But let me go ahead and share mine. It's along the same lines. If you notice, I brought up something a guy has created, as he called it, the Flexi Hand version 2, that you can actually download for free. It's on Thingiverse. But essentially what he's wanting to do is provide people the ability to create an appendage if you've lost it. And if you notice here, this particular hand is articulated. It has fully articulated joints. And it looks a lot like the shape of a hand, unlike some others. So I was thinking that, and here's some more images. Notice how it can grip a cup. And then again, you can see that these are probably nylon pull strings for all the joints. And then it identifies exactly what it consists of. And actually, here's a video. Now, I would go directly to the YouTube video portion of Google now, but what I found out is when we use that, we can watch it, Chris, but the audience can't see it anymore.
Oh.
So we'll have to figure out. I'll probably have to get. Actually, you've got a 2-channel amp right now, but I'll set mine up so in the future we can show audio. But maybe in this case we can just narrate over it. But as you can see, it's fully articulated, and again, all it costs is having access to a 3D printer and some filament.
Right.
So, again, and he makes comment. Let's see, where does it say down? Up in the. Did he write about it? But he's working again with a company that I joined up in, and we are going to do an interview with them, hopefully sooner than later. That oh shoot, I've forgotten the name. Do you remember the group that started?
Yeah, RoboHand.
Is it okay? Well, it's RoboHand, and then But there's a group, E-Enabled, that has a Facebook page, but there are a bunch of volunteers who are using 3D printers to print prosthetics for people. So one thing that I wanted to do, if you go back up to it, even though it's slimmer than some of the others out there, one of the things that I'd like to do, and I'm working on it now, is using a 3D scanner, scan the surface of an appendage that a person may still have, left or right, and then mirror it, and then lay the texture over the model itself. So I'm actually going to do that with my own hand. So that way the surface of it will even more represent what the person's other hand or the hand would look like.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea, Mike.
Yeah. So we'll see about doing that. In fact, I'm going to try and create this model for Monday. I have a presentation about 3D in medicine. So let's see if I have time this weekend to get that done. So back to you.
All right. So my next news item again is kind of goes back into to the medical world. This was an article on the 4th of July that we missed in last week's, but I thought it was notable. It's 3D printing aids in ankle replacement surgery enables woman to walk again. I can really relate to this article. I've got 10 inches of stainless steel and 23 pins in my right ankle, and I've had that for over 10 years now, and still haven't taken it out because I don't think it's really it hasn't really been bothering me. But now this woman, she needed kind of a custom prosthetic. They call it an in-bone. And they printed it up. They actually used 3D printing to 3D print this woman's prosthetic for her arthritis. And so they put it in there, and sure enough, she's recovering. So
what was the material that was used?
This one, hold on, let me, I don't know if the article mentioned, it just says plastic. So, it didn't really mention, I don't think it mentioned what actually, they didn't even mention what printer they used. But they just said plastic of some type. I'm sure it had to have been, I'm sure it had to have been medical grade at least, or food grade, you would think, but yeah, not quite sure on that. But again, when you're looking at they're getting away from the one size fits all approach to kind of tackle these these surgeries now, so that they're using basically a custom piece based on this woman's own physiology. So just another cool application of 3D printing. I thought it was notable, just kind of cool.
I totally agree with you, and I'd like to give a shout out to the scanners behind. If it wasn't for the PET, the CT, and the MRI technology, a lot of this would not be available. And so, even though we do have the ability now to replicate things with 3D fabricators, and we've been able to do that for some time, but obviously the price has come down. More importantly, we wouldn't be able to do any of this if we didn't have the MRI or the CT technology that goes behind actually creating these three-dimensional images of things that are inside your body without doing invasive surgery. So,
right.
For the audience, 3D printing is only half the battle here. Okay, so let's move on to some actual 3D print technology. And this one that I picked up isn't fancy by any means, but what's more important, as a lot of it you may be aware of, is we're getting as I'll call it, a boatload of low-cost printers now.
We are.
Actually, let me increase this. Sorry about that. So this one is called the CraftBot 3D printer, and it comes from Budapest, Hungary. So, yay for the Hungarians. But it looks like they've already exceeded their IndieGoGo goal. And if you go down here, I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted to get it at $3.99. But if you're not in the know with the company before they launch, it's pretty much useless. And I guess that's a good thing. And the other plus is that they didn't announce this like a lot of companies are announcing 1 month or even 3 months before their Kickstarter. So kudos to them that I didn't hear about them until they actually launched on Kickstarter. But it's kind of neat. Obviously, they showed the children working with plastic things. But if you notice, they actually come up with their own design for their computer print engine. Then it talks about its specification, but what's really neat is that if you notice here, it says $399. Now the sad thing is that's not the price of the printer. That was just their IndieGoGo special for like 100 of them. It's more like $500. But even so, look at the Ultimaker 2, which is $25.50, and this at $399. The bedside is almost the same. Notice that they say nylon. That's because it has a heated bed. The minimum layer height is about the same. Nozzle diameter is the same. Pretty much everything is the same, plus it's got some new features that the Ultimaker 2 doesn't have. Or in the case of the MakerBot Replicator 2. In fact, the Ultimaker 2 price is actually a little lower. I think it's nearer to $3,000 unless they dropped it. So you're really getting a lot for your money. So you think, okay, maybe it's like the UbiQ or the QUB that was basically, sorry to say this, kind of a pile of junk. It really took a lot to get it up and running. This is a fully developed working model. It looks like it has an aluminum casing, and like a lot of the printers now, it's fully enclosed, and it has a nice little door. Now the door doesn't seem to be full size, so I'm hoping that that doesn't become a hindrance. But it has a heated bed, and it's using one of those newer materials now that you don't have to use stick, and there's a company out there doing that. Maybe I'll bring it up next week. But man, that's a lot for your money. So right now, let's see. They still have, let me refresh this just to make sure. Yeah, they still have a bunch of them at $496. So people jumped in at $399. But even at $500, I still think that's a great deal.
Right.
So if you're in the market for a low-cost printer, this might be the one to choose. But again, there are 2 or 3 other companies. The other plus is that they're ready almost to go to market with this. The Kickstarter for the $496 will be available, in August. They also have one available in September. So that's just right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool.
Well, mine is not too far off from that. It's the same topic, just another printer that was on Kickstarter instead of IndieGoGo. This is a TechCrunch article from a couple days ago. Moda and Moda Printer. They were trying to attempt to tackle the low price tag, high quality type printer, kind of take on MakerBot and all these. And they were doing bargain basement. Unfortunately, they canceled it 2 days ago. They got funded, or they were on their way to be funded because they were well ahead of schedule. They're based out of Sunnyvale, and they were actually offering printers for as little as $99.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It was only like for 10 of them.
Yeah, and then their early bird backer was for $299 and $499, and then, but unfortunately, they for some reason canceled. The best explanation they have on here is that they didn't think they could pull it off, basically, is what it sounds like. So, again, there's people out there, they're trying to get into the market. I think there's, since we're still in the early adopter phase of the market, I think there's still so much room to grow, and you're going to see a lot of people try to enter this market and getting in there. And some with manufacturing experience and others without. And I think a lot of people try to make they try to overpromise, or they kind of tend to overpromise, and then when they fund their crowdfunding, they they end up not being able to pull it off, unfortunately. So luckily, these people canceled it before the Kickstarter ended, so there was nobody out money, and that was promised pledges. So that was at least they were respectful in that regard.
Yeah, but that still strikes me a little odd. How did they come to the conclusion? Were they looking for other financing, or did they find out maybe somebody was knocking on their door because they were violating a patent? It just strikes me as odd. What do you think, Chris? Anything else?
Yeah, I just think that what happens is they end up doing costing and they find out about tooling, and it's they go into it thinking it's going to be one cost, and there's a lot of unforeseen uh, pieces in the production puzzle, if you will. And a lot of people, they don't foresee those. So, you know,
Yeah, but I totally agree with you. I'd like to know more about the backstory, but I would think at the point you get into Kickstarter, you would have a lot of that ironed out. But we know somebody at our back door, Brad Hill, that's going to be going through the same thing soon, and he's still making modifications, so he might run into the same thing. You know, I guess it's supply and demand. If you may have a prototype made, maybe even a few of them, but once you see that you're launching up and people are interested and you can't secure the parts. So maybe we're running into that. As you mentioned, there are a few low-cost printers out there, and they may have gobbled up this stuff. But the one that I showed, I think, might be really interesting because they look like they're very close. I think this was another one that wasn't going to be available till January or February, the one that you mentioned. So I like the fact that the IndieGoGo one says that it'll be available in 2 or 3 months.
right.
But yeah, pretty cool. So on to my next one. So it's kind of the lighter side of things now, and I thought this just struck me odd. Don't lambaste me for the character, but I thought this was kind of fun. Obviously I wasn't much of a Barbie doll player in my day. My sisters were, but could you imagine doing the same thing for your GI Joe? Now, back in my day, these were the 12-inch GI Joes, not those little weenie figures that you have now. But imagine being able to 3D print a suit of armor or maybe some furniture for your Barbie doll. So I thought this was pretty cool, and I can see this going further, maybe even Mattel opening up their 3D print design studio so that you get a Barbie doll and some software and a 3D printer. So again, it doesn't have to be just for girls, and there's a lot of controversy over the Barbie doll itself and its dimensions not being accurate. But besides that, I still think it's a cool thing. And imagine being able to accessorize your stuff. I remember cutting things out of paper and or some cloth material and trying to sewing it together for my GI Joe. In those days, you actually had, well, those days, I'm talking about the 60s, you actually had material. You put on a pair of pants just like you put on your own pair of pants. You'd make a tent and you'd go out camping with your GI Joe. So now you can make your own miniature weapons. But I guess there's probably more of the African survivalist character now. I don't know. Maybe too many people are playing games.
I love it. I love how the sword goes around her hand like that because she doesn't have the closed fist, like the GI Joes do. So they kind of modified the sword to kind of clip onto her arm. I like it. It's a very creative solution.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so back on to you.
Well, I think for me, I'm wrapped up with my news items for the week, and yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought we'd let's see. Oh no! I thought we'd start something new, to kind of fill out the 30 minutes, and that is kind of the project of the week that we're working on. As maybe our audience knows or they don't know, both Chris and I run 3D print shops, scan shops, and design shops. So we're not just talkers; we're the doers as well. So I thought we'd kind of talk about what we've done. I started that last week. So maybe Chris, you can start. Let us know what you're working on, and then if there's any cool item that you found that in this week that you want to share with us.
Sure, I could share something I'm working on right now. Yeah, so I'm working on one of these for my office right now. I'm kind of custom building my own, but for those that are interested, it's called Plotterbot, and it's a project that's kind of well known throughout the maker community, and it's basically a gigantic plotter that uses two stepper motors. So you just need two stepper motors and a servo, and then an Arduino. And let me see if I could pull up a picture of it. Let's see here. And we'll go here. And it basically draws anything you want. And so you can just it basically draws on a big piece of melamine. So I've been working on. Well, that's not gonna be a very good image. I'm trying to find a good image of the Plotterbot here. Yeah, so it suspends a pen on a weighted just on a weight and uses gravity, and it triangulates a position of the pen. Using the stepper motors are on either side, and there's a string going down to the pen, and it's basically a giant plotter. But instead of using an XY Cartesian setup, it's just two strings and two motors, and the servo actuates the pen up and down to either lift or drop the pen to the surface to start drawing. And so it's just kind of I'm just going to set it up. I'm kind of planning to set it up in my office and have it in the background and kind of just have it draw anything, whether it's some of the 3D designs I've been working on. You know, I work on drawings for my clients, 3D CAD clients. And my idea is just to have it kind of be able to rip out some drawings, mechanical drawings, or even creative posters or whatever. Just have it draw all day, because I have my 3D printers going all day. It's just another thing. So what I've been doing is kind of designing the parts, my own kind of custom parts, because I'm kind of trying to scrap build out of parts that I have lying around.
Why don't you show us?
Well, I can. I mean, basically, I don't have anything sitting right here. Some of it's downstairs. But yeah, so I'm starting to. I'm actually going to use spools. So the motors are actually going to drive empty filament spools to take up the string or the fishing line or whatever.
That's reusing it.
Yeah, so that's kind of the scrap, and then I have a big sheet of melamine that's going to be the work surface, because melamine's really flat and seems like a really good. I've had drafting tables that are made out of melamine, and they're real smooth and good drawing surfaces. So that's what I kind of ended up with as my drawing surface. So yeah, so I hopefully will be making some progress on that in the next week or so, and get up a nice Plotterbot, and it'll be here behind me drawing. So maybe on one of our future podcasts you'll see it going.
Yeah, maybe what you could do is have a webcam with maybe one of the newer Arduinos or Raspberry Pi, and actually there's a new model coming out too from NVIDIA. Maybe you could use that to capture the image and then digitize it and then send it to your printer, so as soon as they walk in, this thing starts printing the facial features of your client. That would be kind of cool.
That would be cool.
Okay, well, my item is, a lot of you already know, I have been working feverishly over, I don't know, since December, designing little things for the Structure I/O. And if you don't know what the Structure I/O is, it is a brand new scanner made out of the same technology that the Kinect is famous, or the Microsoft Kinect is famous for, except in a much more compact price. Here's the actual unit. But what I've designed is a close-up lens system, and I finally obtained some high-quality camera lenses from a famous camera maker, and I've essentially created a bracket that fits over the two lenses, and it gives it a more close-up. So what it allows me to do is bring the camera in closer, and if you're familiar with the Kinect, you have to stand at a particular distance. But using it for scanning, if you want more detail, you have to bring in the camera closer. The sad thing is that these things are made more as a general type scanner, so you can scan up to close to about a meter away. So this actually reduces that by half. So about 500 to 300 millimeters from the object. And so you can get more clarity. If you look at our little heads in our lower two-thirds there, you'll see some of the results for it. Plus you can go out to my Sketchfab and actually see some of the meshes. It is, in my opinion, really turning what's going to be a $400 scanner into something that's going to compete with a $10,000 scanner. And plus there's another product that I'm promoting called the Fuel 3D that I think this is giving it a run for the money as well. But what I'm hoping to do is finish this up, and working with my friend Chris, we're going to fabricate this. I'm hoping to sell this for $39.95. I just got a call from, or actually an email from 3D Systems, and they're very interested in working with me and selling this. So I thought that was kind of cool this morning. If you don't know, 3D Systems has worked out a deal with Occipital, who makes the Structure IO, to sell it as the, or they call it the iSense, for $500. So that'll be kind of neat. So look forward to this in a month or two. The other thing on this that I've developed is I have a quick disconnect connector that I've created that allows me to take the Structure IO and literally with a little bit of epoxy or some 3M tape mount it to any iPad case. So if you don't know, the Structure IO works with an iPad, iPad mini, and what I've done is I've taken one of the cases that supports a tripod mount, and I put a little handle on it. And with some PC software that Chris and I work with called Skinect, I'm able to use this as a wireless monitor and literally go into another room and scan somebody and control the PC. And the big advantage of that is the PC has the horsepower. This becomes your view screen. It really makes the whole process a lot easier. So look forward to this. I think both companies are going to be launching this in, I think, August or even September. And again, it's very reasonable if you're looking to get into 3D scanning. The Structure IO is going to be used for augmented reality as well. So I've got one more item. This just came in. If you remember, I talked about it the other day that Formlabs has a Formlabs Plus that's coming out. But one of the things they redesigned was the resin tray. And I'll open it up just for you guys. But in the past, the resin tray was clear. Well, now they've made it out of the same translucent material that they've made their cover out of, which is an amber, which blocks UV. So now you can leave your material in this and not have to put it away. I would still suggest that. And then they've also created a cover. And I hope they sell the cover separately for my others. So now I don't have to put it in a plastic baggie or another container. I can just put this cover on it and slip this resin, and I have multiple colored resins, so I'll be able to work with this. So pretty neat. $59 for this tray. Looks like it was injected molded, as Brad made a comment. So yes, Brad, I do agree with you. It appears to be injected molded. Pretty cool, and look forward to trying it out soon. So that's about it for me, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks again for all our listeners out there that are joining us for All Things 3D. Hope you learned something today, and hope to see you again at our next exciting episode of All Things 3D.